Don't fight the Fed is the name of the game, unless if you want to lose. And in today's video, I'll be going over several statistics that do correlate to the event of yesterday, which the Fed did indeed decide to cut 0.25%, and how the picture likely looks for the next few months, not just the next couple of weeks, but now through the next few months, as this is going to massively influence everything. So big stat day, I do want to say. And other than that, we can just jump right into some daily price action statistics, and we can start it off right on over here with Thursdays, which is actually the most likely day to close negatively. But again, we don't really care that much about that particular stat. What we care about is the average percent gain and the average percent loss for those winning and losing Thursdays, and that creates a nice range of areas of interest for today. And to the upside, that would give us a range boundary at around 118.750, and to the downside, basically yesterday's low. And I really want to highlight yesterday's low because not only did it bounce perfectly off of that lower boundary. Again, first pass is a beautiful trade typically for a nice short-term scalp. Second pass, less so. This was the first pass in this case right here, and a major winner. But I really want to highlight yesterday's low because it is going to massively influence the short-term bias that we're going to be having on this channel based off of the advent of yesterday's event, which is, as long as Bitcoin's above yesterday's low, don't fight the fucking Fed. It's up and to the right. It's bullish, blah, 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 blah. Just let it do what it's going to do. Let it float. Let it float its beautiful little feet all the way up to potentially even new all-time highs. Again, there will be twists and turns along the way. And yes, there very likely is going to be a correction, whether it's in the short term or whether it's maybe in October, something like that. But again, correction is not the same thing as bear market or major massive reversal for the holy shit. It blows my mind when people mishear this. Again, Bitcoin can correct, put in a higher low, and continue up and to the right. All higher term timeframes still point to highs not being in here for Bitcoin, at least for this cycle, more or less. But yes, yesterday's low is going to be a major pivot, meaning that as long as Bitcoin's above there, I'm happy to just let it float. Just let it float. Go up and to the right and do your thing. If Bitcoin comes back down below yesterday's low and closes below there, which is 114,787 on the index, then yes, I would be looking at that as an objective signal that we are going to see a correction first. You know, maybe a little bit lower than what we already saw in August or early this month in September. But again, that very likely is going to be a major opportunity for the reasons that we're about to go over in a moment here. So let's start off with some major price action statistics pertaining to SPX over the past 55 years. So this is the major indice in U.S. markets. And I want to give a massive credit to Pesto in the Discord because he was a big inspiration for looking at this data. And he's just overall an amazing guy. One of my favorite people in the damn Discord. And by the way, check out the Discord if you don't already because it's free to join. And there's all sorts of crazy people from all walks of life, literal crazy people, and then also beautifully crazy people as well. Anyways, as far as this data goes, what we're measuring here is the first rate cut that the Fed does after not having changed rates for 6 months or more. There has been 11 iterations in the past 55 years where we have had this particular instance. And the results have been pretty uniform except for 2 of those iterations. The uniform results basically speak to the overwhelming likelihood of significant, massive, girthy, green dildos all up in my face if we fast forward a year out from that first rate cut. Again, after 6 months of no change in either direction. Again, the only two times where that has not been true is 2001 and 2007, which you see right here, which were actually really fucking bad, like down 26.5% and down 21%. And by the way, some of these percentages are approximated just for ease of data. Anyways, yes. So what point am I making? Those 2 instances actually were objectively different, and we'll explain that in a moment. But everything else was up and up fucking big, I will say. With an average, if we were to look over here, an average, if we fast forward a year out, of about 7.5%. That is, again, if we include the negative results. If we obviously, if we do not, it's probably about double that, to be honest. So that's a big fucking number. Again, 15% to 20%-ish in traditional markets. That's big. That's very big. I know it doesn't sound much to crypto crazy people, but it is fucking big, I can assure you. And if you were to make 20% returns each and every year, you'd be rich beyond your fucking wild imagination, you know, in a relatively short amount of time. But not in one day. So maybe it's a little bit too long. Anyways, let me take a sip of this coffee. That cold brew, man, is really good. Really good. Anyways, yes. Okay, so that'll be your returns, average and medians, as we just went over. Can take a little bit more of a, of a deeper look right here as well, in the sense that in the short term, it was mostly tilted positively. A little bit less so after that. 60 to 90 days, again, we're talking about mostly positive, pulled down by some of those losing years for sure, but mostly positive. So again, we're talking like 2 to 3 months from now. That's November, December. That's typically, the high time for Bitcoin, of course. And then 1 year out, typically massively positive. But there, for those two major losing years, 2001 and 2007, to be fair, that was a recession, and the other ones were not. So, if we were to kind of look at this data through that lens, this current one that we're seeing in 2025, again, less likely to be a recession. And it does, and I actually did listen to Jerome Powell's speech yesterday, and it really does seem to me that he is, it seems to me that the Fed is wanting to lower more and more and more, and that is going to be the expectation. And this is a market that is driven by expectations. That is why, a lot of the time the results today do not matter that much. It's about the forward outlook. That's what people care about. That's what the market is running off of. Not saying that that's right or wrong. I don't fucking know, but that is how the market operates. Anyways, the reason why this is massively influential is because we also have something of significance that did happen recently as well, or I should say past recently. We've referenced this data early on in this month, and also in late August, and also in many years prior. And this is looking at the data for September 15th to September 30th very specifically. Why? Because it is a very commonly parroted term that people will say, September is always a bad month for Bitcoin, September bad, September down, September red. And generally speaking, that actually is true if you measure from the first day of September to the last day of September. However, because September does have a major event inside of it known as the quad witching, which only happens, as the name would imply, 4 times a year, that is a major, typically, turning point. And so the 15th, which is around where you typically get your quad witching, it's going to be the third Friday of September. So it's technically a little bit after that, but close to it. And I just wanted a really easy way to kind of collect this data. But if we measure from the 15th to the 30th of September, it's actually extremely historically a positive time for Bitcoin, with 80% of all September's closing green during that period. The only times that we've seen Bitcoin basically red during that period was 2020, 2019, and 2014. So again, very, 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 very minimal here. Basically 12 out of 15 prior times we've seen it close green. So high probability there. I always love high probabilities, and 80% is something that would be considered high probability. Now, if we look at the average gain during that time, which I'll explain why this is really going to matter a little bit later on, the average gain has been just under 4%. And seeing as we are already past day number 15, we could kind of create a little bit of a point of interest here for Bitcoin. So if we added 4% or almost 4% to the 15th, that would put Bitcoin somewhere around 121, 122 region, basically all-time highs, at least as far as I'm concerned. Of course, to the downside, when we have seen losing back 15 days of September, it actually has been pretty fucking bad, down 13%. But here's why this data really has a major life force behind it. It's not just because of this next couple weeks, basically. It's not because of, the last 15 days of September. It's because this can have a major bleeding effect into the next 3 months. Not only do we have interest rates being reduced and, forward outlooks starting to be very, very, very favorable to assets, we also have this data over here. Whenever September has closed green, which again, doesn't happen that often for Bitcoin, but when it does, Bitcoin has gone on to have a phenomenally green Q4. So the time between October to December has been up fucking big, massive girthy green doodles. I'm talking about bull fucking shish kebab popsicle sticks being shoved up all the Bears Anguses, including my own, and coming out your mouth hole because it is that fucking powerful. Now, we actually have seen the past 2024 and 2023, September's closed green. And well, Bitcoin went on to produce, about 50% gains or a little bit more. If we include all of these, the average would be significantly higher. That's due to these outliers here in 2013 and 2010. Realistically, I don't really care too much about data that's even pre-2017, to be honest. But, these are outliers. They're 400% or more. If we got rid of those, the average return for a Q4 after a green September would be probably somewhere around 50 to 60%. That's big. That's fucking big. And again, because we already have this data in motion over here, and we know that September is actually at this point very likely to close green alongside the macro backdrop, well, well, again, you know, if Bitcoin closes, let's just say, even if it closes right here, it would still be green for September because all Bitcoin needs to do is close above 109.5 by the end of September in order to be green. But if, you know, if we even took it from right here, putting this perspective, oh, we have to raise the roof. It's off the charts right now. We can't even see how high this one goes. Oh my God, it's like we've never even seen before. Okay, we need a lot. We're gonna need a bigger chart. We're gonna need a bigger chart here, man. If we had 50%, again, kind of where Bitcoin's more or less at right now, that puts Bitcoin at 175. 60% puts Bitcoin at about 185, 190-ish region on CME. Like, these are big fucking numbers. Again, we haven't seen September close just yet, but I would say the probabilistic outlook is starting to really favor this turning into. I think it might very well turn into a parabolic Q4. Again, there can still be corrections during parabolic moves. In fact, we've seen it many times before. And I do think that ultimately a parabolic Q4 is not good for the long term because, well, the way you go up is the way you come down. But you know, if Bitcoin did want to correct, I don't know, maybe in October or something like that, and play out some of those setups that we were looking at earlier in this month, then, you know, those targets are going to be much higher than where they're at right now. They're probably going to be around Bitcoin's current low that we saw in September. So just, you know, preparing for something like that, be aware that, yeah, a correction can and almost certainly will happen, and it will be a nasty one too. But it's going to very likely be an opportunity. Now, long term, like I said, parabolic Q4. Personally, I do not think it's going to end up well long term. I think that is going to turn this into a parabolic blow up at some point as well. That is just typically what happens in markets. But hey, enjoy it while it lasts. On top of all of this, with Bitcoin once again rallying back up above 116.5, it is now above the weekly HPDR median for CME, which is a big balancing point here for the weekly time frame. Assuming Bitcoin finishes a week above this number, 116.5 on CME, which closed tomorrow on Friday, then I mean, coming into, I don't know how long it's going to take, but just overall, it might be a few weeks, might be a few months. I don't fucking know. The top side of the 38.2 level becomes a legitimized target actually for price action, and that's right now at about 130. So obviously that would be significantly new all-time highs. Again, still depends on Bitcoin's ability to close above this number by tomorrow, but so far so good. And in the short term, like I said, as long as Bitcoin's just more or less above Wednesday's low of 114,800 or so, up and to the right is the name of the game, and correction comes later. And that means that a corrective low that we could be looking for based off of the 4-day setup over here, you know, this is naturally going to be higher because the longer that it takes to play this out, the more and more that this moving average here will be raised up. So at some point, it is inevitable that it will get tested, and that is a very good corrective target. But again, if we draw this out, you know, even for another couple weeks, how high could that? I mean, that could be basically what the low is already for August. So maybe you get another try somewhere around there, something like that. And then the actual next move to the upside. It could be something like that. Again, just be aware of that. If and when we do get a swift correction, that is going to be a really good area of interest to be aware of. Anyways, let me just make sure that I'm referencing all my notes here. Yeah, we got that. Again, how's this going to look like on the very high term timeframes? Well, weekly time frame does have hidden bullish divergence here. Again, that correlates well with this one likely trying to the upside. On top of that, we see weekly volatility is extremely low. So this one really does have a chance to, have a massive bull fucking dildo party. And even the weekly RSI is getting back into the bullish control zone. So, not bad there as well. And then on top of this, and also what kind of plays into, I suppose, parabolic Q4 is all of this stuff on the higher term time frame. So let's go here. And let's reference this data. So the monthly time frame is going to see stochastic momentum very likely continue to the upside, assuming Bitcoin just finishes this month of September above 102,450. We are past the halfway point of September, so I'd say that's looking rather likely. The 2-month time frame is very likely going to also continue the upside. This one is not closing this month, but of course, we want to be aware of this. It's 111,700. so much higher than the monthly, but hey, they are still both very much vertical here. And then the 3-month time frame, which does close at the end of September, is pivoted at 109,100. So yes, all of these higher term timeframes, momentum oscillators are still pointed in the north direction and are in very critical territories, which is difficult to kind of keep the momentum up in these regions. But hey, as long as they are pointed up, you will get the most crazy runs when you are in the critical territory. So as of right now, they are all uniformly pointed to the upside with plenty of space to go. So, again, do I think that Q4 is probably going to be parabolic, all of these things considered? Yeah. Do I think that after that, it's going to end in tears for many people? Also, probably yes. But hey, before that, there should be a pretty good fucking party, man. And again, personally, I was hoping that Bitcoin would certainly spend more time consolidating and correcting here before taking this next leg to the upside. But hey, and again, the reason why I would personally prefer that to happen because that would elongate the market cycle and, avoid likely that massive meltdown that typically follows parabolic blow-off tops. But because of what's happening here, I think that's going to be a very nice next few months, most likely. Again, assuming that September follows through, but statistically speaking, this is very, very likely right now. At the end of the day, it's going to be a fun period followed by a not so fun period. So like I said, be careful of what you wish for, but maximize your profits as much as you fucking can during these periods because this is where I suppose the biggest gains are likely to come. So fair enough. Again, big focus on yesterday's low as long as Bitcoin's above there. Correction is coming later, I don't know when, but just later. And again, that is 114,800 or so on a daily closing basis. If Bitcoin were to come back down below there in the short term, then hey, correction plays out in the short term. Again, that 4-day setup is very likely where I'm going to be looking at for a targeted region. But yeah, for right now, just let her float up and to the right and enjoy the ride, I suppose. And we will come back at it tomorrow with another live stream analysis. And with all of that said, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time. And I forgot to fucking say it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I didn't even fucking say that. Fuck it, man. Who cares? If you want to like the video, like the video. If you want to subscribe and get more shit like this, then do that. If you don't, then don't. All good. Okay. Take care. Much love and see you later.